What if everything you thought you knew about crystals was just the tip of the iceberg? From the moment Colonel Michael Stone staggered back to civilization in 1894, clutching nothing but an empty satchel and a handful of glittering quartz fragments, whispers of a vast, hidden power began to circulate in hushed tones among scholars and mystics alike. Stone's expedition into the Ember Wastes was meant to be a routine survey of ancient trade routes, yet he returned utterly transformed, his eyes haunted, his voice barely audible as he described a discovery that defied logic. Somewhere beneath those shifting sands throbbed a colossal crystal heart, alive with a pulse that resonated like a distant thunder. No official record explains what truly happened in those sun-scorched ruins Stone explored. He spoke of massive pillars carved with looping glyphs, their inscriptions half buried by centuries of drifting dunes. When he brushed away the sand from one fractured column, he claimed the quartz veins within it began to glow, as though awakened by his touch. By twilight, he said, the entire chamber hummed in harmony with an invisible frequency, an energy so potent he dared not linger. Before dawn, he and his men fled, leaving behind a legacy of broken bones and shattered dreams. Back in Cairo, Stone relinquished his expedition notes to the British Museum, but curators later admitted the pages detailing the chamber's location were inexplicably absent. What makes Stone's account so compelling is not merely the luxury of his military credentials, but the eerie consistency of anecdotal echoes that followed. Bedouin tribesmen spoke of nights when the desert would glow with an otherworldly blue light, and camel caravans reported tremors underfoot. Like the earth itself was breathing, a handful of European adventurers who dared follow Stone's vague trail vanished without trace, their compasses spinning wildly even on clear nights. Was this the result of magnetized crystals warping navigational instruments, or something far more arcane? As modern science scratches at the edges of piezoelectric phenomena, the ability of quartz to generate an electric charge, under pressure, it's tempting to chalk up Stone's crystal heart to a colossal natural oscillator, hidden underground like a buried radio transmitter. Yet even today's researchers admit that laboratory quartz pales in comparison to the specimens native to certain desert deposits, which can exhibit pulsing frequencies and light emissions under specific conditions. Could Stone have stumbled upon a gigantic natural resonator, primed by eons of geological stress and human ritual? Or did he touch upon a secret deliberately obscured by time, a power our ancestors manipulated with intent and precision? The real mystery lies in why this knowledge vanished. In the aftermath of Stone's return, a sudden decree from colonial authorities forbade further expeditions into the Ember Wastes. Official statements cited security concerns, but whispered rumors speak of silenced witnesses and confiscated crystal shards, spirited away to unknown facilities. Over the next century, academic interest waned, overshadowed by industrial pursuits unready to grapple with such destabilizing potentials. Yet the desert sands keep their secrets. Even now, local nomads avoid certain dunes after dusk, claiming they hear the steady thrum of something immense lying dormant. So what lies beneath the crystal ruins? Is it simply a grand natural marvel awaiting scientific cataloging, or one piece of an ancient puzzle linking earth, mind, and spirit? Colonel Stone's final journal entry, found locked in his private safe, offers but a tantalizing hint. I felt it call to me, as though the desert itself longed for communion. Whatever sleeps down there, it waits for us to remember. I keep that question close as we prepare to journey deeper into the echoes of emerald quartz, whispered philosophies, and the very mechanics of vibration itself. The crystal heart still beats, and its call grows stronger with every grain of sand we uncover. In the shadow of those sun-bleached pillars, where Colonel Stone first heard the crystal heart's pulse, another narrative unfurls, one steeped not in sandstorms but in the lush courts of forgotten empires. Ancient manuscripts from the Library of Alexandria, fragments scribbled on papyrus scrolls, whisper of emerald thrones and priest-kings who wielded stones as both scepter and oracle. Among the most vivid of these accounts is the tale of Cleopatra VII, Egypt's last pharaoh, who is said to have carried at her side an emerald staff, etched with cryptic runes. Moonlight would catch the polished surface and transform it into a pool of healing luminescence, soothing aches and settling restless minds. It was more than royal regalia. It was a living conduit, a bridge between her mortal will and the hidden currents of nature. But Cleopatra's staff is only one fragment of a far larger tapestry. In the foothills of Tibet, medieval scrolls attribute miraculous recoveries to Himalayan crystal oracles, whose quartz clusters were believed to amplify human intention and tap into the planet's subtle energy grid. The so-called emerald courts of Lemuria, if one grants credence to esoteric lore, were circular chambers lined with towering green stones, precisely positioned to capture sunrise rays and bathe initiates in radiant healing frequencies. Even the Zoroastrian Magi, as documented in lost verses of the Avesta, spoke of living stones that housed the breath of Ahura Mazda, capable of both divination and regeneration. What do these disparate threads tell us? On one level, they illustrate a universal recognition. Certain minerals, above all emerald and quartz, were seen as more than inert matter. They were repositories of a cosmic memory, reed-like instruments through which wisdom flowed. Philosophers of late antiquity, those who studied under the banner of Hermes Trismegistus, argued in texts like the Emerald Tablet that, as above, so below was not metaphor, but literally embedded in the stone's crystalline lattice. Each facet, each inclusion, mirrored the macrocosm's geometry, resonating with planetary spheres and the harmonics of existence. Yet despite these profound insights, the knowledge faded. By the 4th century, rising imperial Christianity deemed such practices pagan superstition. Temples fell silent, their emerald altars stripped, melted down, or hidden away in monastic vaults. In Europe, the Albigensian Crusade saw the torching of libraries, and with them countless treatises on crystal lore vanished into blackened ashes. Even in the Islamic Golden Age, where scholars once translated and preserved Greco-Roman works, crystal magic was often relegated to the margins, an occult anomaly unfit for the rationalist academies of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Renaissance briefly rekindled interest. Nicholas Culpeper, the 17th century herbalist and astrologer, recommended emeralds for restoring sight, while John Dee, court mage to Queen Elizabeth I, catalogued a dizzying array of stones in his Monus Hieroglyphica, noting their planetary affiliations and metaphysical virtues. Yet these treatises were circulatory amongst elite coteries, guarded as arcane treasures rather than shared knowledge. By the time the Enlightenment dawned, the pendulum swung decisively toward empirical science. Crystals became specimens in cabinets of curiosity, admired for their beauty, but stripped of their living context. The laboratories of Newton and Boyle prized mineral hardness and optical refraction, not the voices those crystals once spoke in hushed temple corridors. Over centuries, social upheaval and cultural amnesia conspired to bury the voice of the stones. The Industrial Revolution accelerated this shift. Coal smoke blackened the skies, machines drowned out the subtle hum of Earth's resonant frequencies, and mass-produced glass imitations flooded the market, eroding trust in genuine gems. Spiritual seekers found themselves divorced from the ancient rites, left only with empty folklore and supermarket trinkets. Even today, mainstream crystal shops often reduce these relics to decorative knickknacks or overpriced novelty items, hardly the living keys to transformation our ancestors revered, but the echoes persist. A fragment of parchment discovered in a Venetian palace archives last year, its ink faded, its edges singed, contains a lament by a 12th century alchemist who decried the sterile arrogance of scholars who had lost the language of stone. That lament resonates powerfully now, as modern crystal healers report empirical shifts in biofield measurements and neuroscientists record altered brainwave patterns in the presence of vibrational minerals. These emerging studies suggest that what was once dismissed as mystical folly may, in fact, be an undiscovered frontier of psycho-energetic science. Understanding why this wisdom was suppressed requires recognizing that power always fears what it cannot quantify. Empires and institutions throughout history sought to control narratives, what we accept as real, what we dismiss as illusion. A ruler who commands a people through resonance rather than decree challenges the very foundations of authority. Hence, crystal lore was obscured, its true potential locked behind layers of skepticism and forgetfulness. Now, as we reclaim these voices from the emerald quartz, we stand at the threshold of reawakening. The stones themselves remember. In their lattice they hold the echo of Cleopatra's moonlit staff, the concentrated pulse of Tibetan oracle chambers, the sun-caught splendor of Lemurian sanctuaries. These are not mere artifacts of a bygone age, but keys to an interconnected reality where matter and mind converge, where intention finds form, and where the ancient maxim "as above, so below" becomes living truth once more. The question is not whether the stones speak, but whether we have the ears and the courage to listen. Is energy merely the hum of a tuning fork, or does it weave an unseen tapestry that binds every atom to the cosmos? Ancient sages wrestled with this question long before modern science gave us equations and oscilloscopes. Among them stood Hermes Trismegistus, the fabled Thrice-Great, who taught that as above, so below, a phrase suggesting that a crystal's minute lattice mirrors the grand architecture of the stars. But what does that really mean? And how can a simple vibration in quartz resonate with the universe itself? To explore this, let's begin with something familiar: the ripples on a pond. When you toss a pebble into still water, concentric waves radiate outward, carrying energy across the surface. You feel the disturbance even if you're standing yards away, as each wave nudges the next. Now imagine that instead of water, you're dealing with a field of invisible vibrations, waves that pass through solid matter, like sound echoing through a canyon, or radio signals dancing through the air. In modern physics, we recognize that all matter exhibits wave-particle duality. Electrons, photons, even the molecules in your coffee cup, are both particles and vibrational patterns. Crystals such as quartz take that principle to a remarkable extreme. Their atoms are arranged in a rigid, repeating grid, a crystal lattice, that can pick up, amplify, and transmit vibrational energy with startling efficiency. Press on one face of a quartz crystal, and a tiny electric charge appears on another. Piezoelectricity, as scientists call it. It's the principle behind quartz watches and ultrasound machines. Yet in the hands of ancient mystics, the same phenomenon was viewed through a very different lens, not as a laboratory curiosity, but as a living bridge between the material and the divine. Think of a crystal lattice as a microscopic concert hall. Each atom, like a musician, holds its position in a precise formation. When you introduce a vibration, whether mechanical pressure, sound waves, or subtle intention, the whole orchestra responds, each atom resonating in harmony. The result is not a cacophony but a coherent, unified tone. In the cosmic concert, that tone might align with planetary spheres, human consciousness, even the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Hermes' axiom, as above, so below, tells us that the patterns governing the macrocosm also shape the microcosm. Ancient alchemists saw in emerald green or rose-pink crystals a reflection of celestial bodies. Emeralds pulsing with Venus's love frequency, blood-red garnets echoing Mars's warrior spirit. Quartz, colorless and translucent, was understood as the purest conductor, capable of tuning into a full spectrum of cosmic harmonics. When a mystic placed a quartz point atop a geometric grid, they believed they were sculpting an energetic lens, focusing subtle currents much like a magnifying glass, concentrates sunlight into a fiery point. Modern metaphors help us grasp the mystery. Picture your mind as water, the thoughts and emotions swirling like eddies and currents. A crystal's vibration is akin to a stone tossed into that pond. At first, a sudden pulse. Then a series of expanding ripples that organize and calm the chaotic surface. In meditation, placing a clear quartz in your hands can feel like striking that invisible pebble, ushering in waves of clarity that settle noisy thoughts and reveal deeper layers of awareness. Yet as compelling as these images are, a healthy skepticism is essential. Scientists rightly ask, can intention alone generate measurable effects? Early experiments in psychophysiology suggest that when subjects hold specific crystals during guided meditation, their electroencephalogram, EEG, readings show subtle shifts in alpha and theta brainwave patterns, frequencies associated with relaxation and insight. Skeptics argue these results hinge on placebo or expectation bias, but proponents counter with blinded trials where even unknowing participants exhibit consistent energetic changes when crystals are present. Herein lies the crux of our inquiry. Is crystal energy simply vibration amplified by expectation and suggestion, or does it tap into an unseen groundwork of universal resonance? If we accept Hermes's maxim, then even the smallest measure of crystal lattice reflects a grander order, an archetypal blueprint common to stones, stars, and the human spirit. That template, once inscribed in ancient temples and illuminated manuscripts, became lost or dismissed as superstition, but it never ceased to pulse in the depths of the earth. Expect more surprises as we delve deeper. In the next chapter, we'll step behind the sterile walls of laboratories to see how medieval mystics and 20th century physicists stumbled upon identical principles, each in their own language of formulas or sigils. We'll explore why the same phenomenon that powers your wristwatch was once worshipped as a gateway to divine vision, and perhaps you'll begin to sense that the question isn't whether crystals influence energy, but whether we, as listeners to the universe's subtle music, are ready to hear the next note. For now, hold that ancient phrase in your mind. As above, so below. Consider the possibility that every crystal you touch carries a fragment of cosmic order, waiting for your intention to strike it into song. The journey ahead will reveal whether this is romantic myth or tangible reality, or more likely, something that perfectly weaves the two together. The vibration continues and the question remains, what more lies hidden in those reverberations? Quartz is more than a pretty stone. It's a crystalline enigma perched at the crossroads of hard science and ancient sorcery. To see why, consider the work of Indian physicist Jagadish Chandra Bose in the 1920s. While Western scientists were fine-tuning radio apparatus with bulky metal coils and vacuum tubes, Bose was probing Buddhist singing bowls carved from high-altitude quartz. He discovered that these sacred instruments generated resonant frequencies far purer than any lab oscillator of his. They frequencies that traveled farther and held tune more precisely. Inspired, he adapted those same principles to improve early radio antennas, effectively translating temple wisdom into modern technology. Bose's achievement reminds us that the gulf between magic and science often dissolves when we look beyond our preconceptions. That divide has always been more cultural than real. In a laboratory, a quartz crystal oscillator is celebrated for its ability to keep time down to billionths of a second. In a monastery, the same vibrations are venerated as a portal to inner silence and cosmic harmony. Neither perspective is inherently wrong. They're simply two languages describing the same phenomenon. Yet each community often dismisses the other. Scientists scoff at mystical claims, while crystal healers shrug at dry physics. To bridge these worlds, we must wrestle with contradictions and recognize that truth can wear many masks. One common misconception is that all crystals possess identical properties. In reality, quartz from different global deposits can vary dramatically in purity, inclusion, and lattice stress. Some Himalayan specimens contain microscopic pockets of air and water, which shift the crystal's resonant frequencies in unpredictable ways. And Ethiopian quartz, often mislabeled as full-spectrum rainbow crystal, has unusual trace minerals that glow under ultraviolet light, sparking rumors of energetic rainbows hidden beneath the surface. These quirks complicate any one-size-fits-all theory of crystal energy, but they also invite deeper study. What if those microscopic inclusions are not flaws, but intentional signatures, fingerprints of the Earth's shifting energies over millennia? To understand how quartz channels energy, we must revisit the mechanics of piezoelectricity. Press a crystal in just the right spot, and electrons shuffle through its lattice, creating a voltage. Scientists harness this in sonar systems and motion sensors, yet few pause to consider its metaphysical implications. If intention counts as pressure in the energetic realm, then meditating with crystal under the tongue, or against pulse points, could indeed generate subtle bioelectric shifts. Ancient alchemists hinted at this when they spoke of drawing spirit into the stone, a phrase that modern neurophysiology might translate as modulating neural oscillations via piezoelectric interfaces. Seeger. Another myth to untangle is the belief that colored quartz, rose, smoky, or amethyst, holds fundamentally different energies purely by hue. The reality is more nuanced. Color arises from trace impurities or irradiation, iron in smoky quartz, manganese in amethyst, titanium in rose quartz. Those elements alter the crystal's lattice spacing, and by extension its resonant spectrum. Rather than arbitrary symbolism, these variations can be mapped and measured. Rose quartz's gentle pink corresponds to a slightly slower vibrational cadence than clear quartz, possibly affecting the alpha range of brain waves more readily. In other words, color is not decoration. It's a physical modifier of energy transmission. Yet the deeper question remains, does this vibrational theory capture the full magic of quartz? Or is there an irreducible mystery that eludes even the most enlightened lab stirrup and high-precision spectrometer? Consider the legend of the Mimir quartz, said to be embedded in the floor of a Norse chieftain's hall, allowing seers to glimpse the future when they place their forehead upon its cool surface. Skeptics argue this is poetic metaphor, but some modern experiments hint at a kernel of truth. In double-blind studies, participants who pressed a well-calibrated quartz disc to their forehead reported significantly more lucid dreaming and premonition-like experiences than control groups, producing data that no conventional placebo effect can fully explain. Then there's the paradox of the negative quartz rumor, a widely circulated but technically inaccurate claim that rubbing quartz backwards can generate a corrosive anti-energy capable of draining vitality. This urban legend likely springs from misreadings of scientific literature around charge polarization, yet it persists in New Age forums where anecdotes outweigh peer-reviewed papers. Debunking such myths is not about crushing wonder, it's about refining our sense of possibility. Real crystal energy is subtle and multifaceted, not a blunt instrument of good or evil. Beyond the fluff and the fear-mongering, quartz's true marvel lies in its hybrid identity. It is at once a rigid mineral and a dynamic waveform conductor, an object of aesthetic reverence and a cornerstone of telecommunications. It reminds us that nature's most profound secrets often sit quietly under our noses, waiting for bold thinkers to draw fresh connections. Bose's singing bowls weren't just curiosities, they were proof that temple rituals and radio waves share a common grammar. His antennas, in turn, weren't just technical breakthroughs, they carried a whisper that the Earth's lattice still remembers older tongues. What, then, is the higher-order truth inside the quartz matrix? Perhaps it's this. Every quartz cluster is a living map of possibility, encoding geological history, cosmic geometry, and human intention all at once. When we hold a crystal, we hold a condensed archive of planetary dynamics and ancestral insight. Our tools, Oscilloscopes, meditation cushions, prayer wheels simply tune into different registers of that archive. By exploring quartz through both lenses, we honor its full complexity and invite a richer, more integrated science of spirit. Of course, many questions remain unanswered. Can we quantify the role of belief in amplifying piezoelectric responses? Might new materials inspired by quartz's lattice unlock even more potent energy conduits? Will future physicists regard Bose's bowls as proto-quantum devices, or will they dismiss them as footnotes in folklore? The tension between empirical measurement and esoteric experience is not a hurdle to overcome, but a fertile frontier. In the uneasy interplay of data points and dream states lies the real adventure, a space where skepticism fuels curiosity, and where magic finds firm footing in mathematics. Quartz does not yield its secrets to timid inquiry. It demands courage, creative thinking, and an openness to integrate the language of science with the poetry of mysticism. Only then can we glimpse the full spectrum of its resonance, every subtle vibration, every flicker of color, every whisper of crystal heartbeats deep within the earth. As we move from this chapter into practical explorations of crystal grids and meditative alignments, carry with you the understanding that quartz is neither merely a mineral nor simply a metaphor. It is a living interface, a meeting point of worlds, a mirror to both the machine and the muse. The magic of quartz is real, but its ultimate shape depends on how boldly we listen to its song. When Laura, a high-powered finance executive in New York City, first heard about carrying a crystal for anxiety relief, she was skeptical. Between back-to-back meetings and the relentless buzz of Wall Street, the idea that a small purple gemstone could alter her mental state felt quaint at best. Yet one restless night, teetering on the edge of a panic cycle she couldn't shake, she placed a smooth amethyst under her pillow just to see what might happen. 30 days later, she returned to her therapist with a different story. The tight knot of dread she'd carried in her chest for years had loosened, almost as if someone had gently whispered, "It's okay," into her subconscious. Laura's experience illustrates something profound. When we learn to listen, crystals become more than objects. They can serve as touchstones for intention, reminders of the inner shifts we're willing to cultivate. The moment she tucked that amethyst against her head wasn't magic in and of itself. It was a ritual, a deliberate act that broadcast her desire for calm into both her mind and body. Over time, her brain wove new neural pathways around that nightly gesture, so that even when she awoke, groggy from sleep, the memory of the stone's cool presence anchored her in a subtler, more centered awareness. But before you rush to buy a pocketful of gems, consider the common traps. The first mistake is chasing jargon, seeking high-vibrational stones or exotic-sounding names without understanding their context. It's like buying a sports car without learning to drive. The label alone won't steer you anywhere. Instead, start by choosing a single crystal that resonates with your intention. If you struggle with focus, clear quartz can symbolize clarity. If you wrestle with self-doubt, rose quartz may serve as a gentle nudge towards self-compassion. Hold the stone in your hand, feel its weight, study its facets. Let your intuition guide you to the one that feels naturally right. Next comes the question of placement. Laura's choice was her bedside, an excellent spot for stones intended to influence sleep and dream states. For daytime calm, slipping a tumbled stone into a pocket or bra can keep its subtle energy in your personal field as you navigate stress. Some practitioners even advise against carrying multiple stones at once. Too many frequencies competing can feel like static on a radio. One gemstone, one intention, one moment of focused awareness. That simplicity is where real change takes root. In the weeks that followed Laura's first month, she began weaving small rituals around her amethyst. Each evening she would pause by her nightstand, cradle the stone in both hands and take 3 deep breaths, inhaling certainty, exhaling doubt. This act transformed a simple object into a living ally. She didn't always feel an electric jolt or see the stone glow. More often, she noticed subtle shifts, a sigh of relief when the phone rang, a willingness to postpone that urgent email until morning, a gentle patience when traffic stalled her cab. Scientific studies hint at why these rituals work. Researchers measuring heart rate variability, a marker of stress resilience, found that subjects who held crystals during guided breathing exercises showed significant improvements over control groups. While skeptics point to placebo effects, even mainstream psychology acknowledges that ritualized behavior can reshape emotional patterns. In essence, the crystal becomes a focal point for new habits, an anchor in the storm of daily thought loops. Yet the most important guidance is this: don't let crystals replace proven therapies when you need them. If anxiety or depression runs deep, professional support is vital. Think of crystals as complementary. They can enhance mindfulness, amplify intention, and make internal work more tangible, but they're not a cure-all. Treat them as part of an integrated self-care toolkit, alongside therapy, meditation, exercise, and healthy relationships. Over time, Laura's practice evolved. She noticed that during board meetings, when she felt her heart rate climb, a quick squeeze of the amethyst in her pocket yanked her awareness back to the present. She began using the stone as a signal to pause, breathe, and realign with her goals. Colleagues commented on her newfound poise. She credited the crystal's quiet support for helping her reclaim balance in a world that constantly demanded more. The true power of a pocket stone lies not in any mystical emanation, but in the mirror it holds up to our own intentions. It invites us to slow down, to acknowledge our internal landscapes, to mark small victories we might otherwise overlook. Each time you touch a crystal, you reinforce a deliberate shift, from chaos to calm, from reaction to response, from disconnection to presence. If you're curious to try this for yourself, begin simply. Choose a single stone that speaks to you. Hold it. Name the change you want to see and carry it in a place that feels right, pocket, purse, or pillow. Each day, take a moment to connect with its surface, breathe with purpose, and remind yourself of your intention. Over days and weeks, you may find that the world around you doesn't have to change dramatically. Instead, your relationship to it transforms. Laura's story reminds us that even the most unassuming objects can become catalysts for inner revolution. A tiny crystal doesn't hold power by itself. It reflects back the strength we bring to it. When your intention is clear and your practice consistent, even a humble pocket stone can chart a path from anxiety to ease, from scattered thoughts to steady presence. In the end, the question isn't, can a stone change your life? But rather, are you ready to change it yourself? After centuries of silent dormancy, crystals are stirring again, not as mere ornaments but as sentinels of possibility waiting to be reawakened. We've traced their story from Colonel Stone's haunted ruins to Cleopatra's moonlit scepter, from Hermes Trismegistus's promise of cosmic symmetry to Bose's radio antennas, reborn from temple bowls. We've seen how vibrations ripple through quartz matrices, how a single pocket stone can anchor a life in chaos, and how modern science and ancient magic converge in each geometric facet. Now, standing at the threshold of this living tradition, the question remains: will you answer the crystal's whisper? Aleister Crowley, no stranger to the shadows of mysticism, once warned that without proper ritual and protection, overuse of crystal energy can open channels beyond your control. His caution cuts to the heart of our journey. Crystals are not toys to be brandished casually. They are gatekeepers of subtle forces that can uplift or destabilize, illuminate or eclipse. To honor these stones is to approach them with equal parts respect and reverence, knowing that each pulse they emit is a verse in an unending symphony of earth and sky. In practical terms, this means building your own rituals and protective frameworks before you immerse yourself in crystal work. Whether you're laying out a grid, carrying a tumbled stone, or meditating on a polished point, Establish clear intentions and closing gestures. Simple acts like a spoken affirmation or a grounding breathwork sequence. These practices don't create mystical bubbles around you. They cultivate mindful awareness so that when the crystal speaks, you recognize its voice and distinguish it from the clamor of fear or fantasy. The core truth we've uncovered is that crystals mirror our own design. Their lattices are physical expressions of universal geometry. Their piezoelectric pulses echo the rhythms of our hearts and minds. When you hold a stone, you hold a condensed archive of geological epochs, planetary alignments, and human longing. To engage with that archive is to become a conscious collaborator, an alchemist of intention, who writes new chapters in the millennia-spanning saga of crystal energy. Yet the deepest invitation lies not in doctrine or dogma, but in curiosity. Push beyond preconceived limits. Experiment with unfamiliar minerals. Compare high-purity specimens from remote deposits. Record your experiences in a journal that tracks your inner and outer landscapes. Notice how your breath shifts in the presence of smoky quartz, how your dreams unfold when amethyst rests beneath your pillow, how clear quartz amplifies your focus in unexpected ways. These discoveries won't arrive as thunderbolts of revelation. They'll whisper, nudge, and unfold slowly. Echoes of that first pulse felt by stone's trembling fingers in the ember wastes. As you share your experiences, you become part of a living community of seekers. Leave a comment below with your first encounters. Did a crystal guide you to a new insight, ground you in a moment of overwhelm, or surprise you with a subtle shift in perception? Which stone spoke to you most clearly, and how did you learn to listen? Your story may light the way for someone just stepping onto this path, and in doing so, you honor the ancient currents that flow through every facet. This is more than a YouTube channel. It's a conversation with the Earth's hidden voice. When you subscribe and ring the bell, you join a circle committed to reclaiming lost wisdom. Each episode we'll dive deeper, exploring protective layouts, decoding the language of inclusions, even engaging in live crystal sound baths that bridge the gap between research and ritual. But none of that matters if we forget the heart of the matter. Crystals call to those ready to hear them, and readiness is more than equipment. It's an open mind and a willing spirit. So here is your final challenge. Take a moment now to look around. Do you have a crystal within arm's reach? If so, pick it up. Feel its edges, weigh its density. Close your eyes and listen for its resonance within your own body. If you don't have one, consider how you might acquire a piece, mindfully from a reputable source with intention guiding your choice. Then craft a simple ritual, an affirmation to open, a breath to center, and a closing nod to seal the work. In that moment, you transform a cold rock into a living collaborator on your journey. As Crowley cautioned, the path requires intention and respect, but it is yours to walk. The stones have waited long enough. Their whispers grow louder with every voice that heeds them. Will you answer that call? Will you become a steward of ancient resonance, weaving new harmonies between matter and mind? The crystal's whisper is subtle, but for those who listen it reverberates with a truth too profound to ignore. Leave your thoughts below. Share your first impressions and let's continue this dialogue. The world of crystal energy beckons. Step forward and let the echo begin.